Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the GRIPS lunchtime seminar. My name is Narushige Michita. I teach International Security Affairs at the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, or GRIPS, in Tokyo. I'll be serving as your host today. The GRIPS lunchtime seminar series is designed to highlight and share the research output of GRIPS faculty members. We are recording this seminar and we'll post it on the GRIPS YouTube channel later. And please feel free to have lunch while we speak. Immediately after his inauguration, US President Donald Trump initiated the trade war with China. However, China responded firmly and brought Mr. Trump to his knees. What happened and why could China do that? Today, we have invited GRIPS professor Yuqing Xing to answer this question. Professor Xing teaches economics at GRIPS. Previously, he has worked at the Asian Development, the Bank of Finland, and the World Institute for Development Economics of the United Nations University. He is the author of Decoding China's Export Miracle, a global value chain analysis. Professor Xing has received a PhD in economics from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and master's and bachelor's degrees from PT University. I will ask Professor Xing to speak for about 40 minutes. The presentation and discussion in this session will be on the record. So, hi Yuqing, how are you doing? Thank you very much for joining us today. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Michi, for inviting me to this lunch seminar. It is my great pleasure to share my research with the GRIPS community and the audience at this room and also online. Let me share my slide. Okay. Now the year of 2025 is close to the end. We're going to the brand new year 2026. Looking back at the 2025, I think one of the most important economic events is the Sino-US trade war. The dynamics of the trade war was so dramatic. For a few weeks, the two countries pushed the tariff beyond 124, which could, block the flow of goods between the two countries completely. So I think the tit-for-tat trade war between China and the US will be written in the textbook of economics. It will be considered one of the classic examples in the trade negotiation. Many observers and analysts were surprised at why China pushed back US, so firmly, and they did not expect that China would win the trade war. Surprisingly, I think China won the first round of the trade war. Why China's strategy was so effective, and why China responded so firmly to Trump's tariff. So I'd like to share with you about my analysis. So, it doesn't work. Okay. Before I go into the detail, first I'd like to go through this timeline of the Sino-US trade war. On February 1st, 2025, that is just 10 days after the presidency of Trump, he imposed 10% this fentanyl tariff. But the Chinese government was very quick, did not blink. Immediately responded with 15% tariff on American all natural gas and 10% on agriculture machinery, pickup truck, and a large engine vehicle. President Trump was upset, so he doubled the fentanyl tariff to 20% on March 3rd. China followed with the extension of the tariff, 15% on wheat, corn, and other agricultural products as well as 10% soybean, fruits, and others. On April 2nd, President Trump has started a global trade war by launching so-called reciprocal tariff to all American trading partners. Actually, the Treasury Secretary Vincent urged all the trading partners, don't retaliate. And if you retaliate, you may expect even higher tariff. China did not check out. Then Chinese government immediately responded with 34% tariff on all American goods. So previously, when Trump imposed so-called the fentanyl tariff, China only imposed on selected, but this time all. Then Trump got upset, increased that to 84%. China followed with 84%. Now April 9, US improved that to 125. China just followed. So if you put the 125% together with 20% fentanyl, so American tariff on Chinese goods was about 145. But after China increased its tariff on American goods to 125, Chinese government, I think, elegantly announced that we would not follow anymore because the tariff was already as high, which could block all American goods flow into China. So after a few weeks, the two countries, I think, realized that the level of tariff was crazily high. So they first had a talk in Geneva. So Chinese government did not go to Washington, D.C. to kiss the ass of President Trump. Okay. And so after the Geneva talk, the two countries agreed to lower the reciprocal tariff to 10%. Then after another, I think the two countries actually talked 4 times. So the last negotiation was held in Kuala Lumpur. So after the Kuala Lumpur, meeting, I think the fentanyl tariff was also lowered to 10%. So if you consider the current, so-called reciprocal tariff for China, it is about 10%. It's even lower than the 15% Japan got after more than 10 times negotiation. I think Japan is one of the countries which went to Washington, D.C. to negotiate with US. So if you exclude this fentanyl tariff, China's tariff actually is the lowest among all the partner countries as a result of China's fight against Trump's tariff, not as a result of a compromise. Now, why this is the case? I think basically there are 4 reasons for China to respond firmly to the Trump's tariff. Number 1, unilateral concession failed to end the trade war. Secondly, it is economically optimal to respond tit for tat to Trump's tariff. Third, most Chinese goods to the US are manufactured along global value chain. And the last one, that is China has more cards than implied by the trade balance in goods. So before I begin to explain those 4 points, I'd like to show you my ex-ante analysis. The reason is you may think, okay, today we talk about this, it may not be so valuable because everything happened. My talk may sound like ex-post analysis, right? I'm not a historian, I'm an economist. As an economist, I do both ex-ante and ex-post analysis. So last November, I published an article that is November 20th at Nikkei Asia. My topic is Trump's 60% tariff on Chinese goods would bite Apple the hardest. My prediction, unfortunately, it is correct. Why? According to Apple's quarterly report, in the first quarter, Apple's tariff cost was $800 million. Second quarter, $1.1 billion. Third quarter, it would be $1.4 billion. Of course, Apple is rich. Some folks said, oh, that is tiny. Yes, but for me, that's not tiny, okay? So I think for the whole year, Apple's tariff cost would be more than $4 billion. That's a lot of money, okay? So in January 6th, That is before the inauguration of President Trump, January 6th. I published this article in Chinese at Financial Times, Chinese. The translation of the article's title is China should firmly respond to the looming Trump's tariff. Let me share with you the story behind this article. The former governor of People's Bank of China, Dr. Yuqing, he came to Tokyo last November for participating in this Beijing-Tokyo Economic Forum. At the forum, he said, politically, it is necessary for China to retaliate to the looming Trump's tariff, but economically, it is not optimal. After I heard what he said, my response is I disagree. Actually, Dr. Yuqing also graduated from the University of Illinois at Champaign. He also got a PhD from there. Then I wrote this article. I sent it to this Financial Times Chinese. The editor received my article. Editor said, Professor Xing, your arguments are inconsistent with mainstream in China. Mainstream thinking basically consider that China should be humble. China should not retaliate. I said, please read my article. If you think my arguments are reasonable, logic, publish. Otherwise, throw it away. She published. This article ranked #1 for 1 week in Financial Times Chinese in terms of number of reads. It has been widely circulated in the Chinese internet. I'm not sure whether my article influenced Chinese policymakers' decision making or not. I don't know. But what I can say is I'm very glad what I argued actually are same as what the Chinese government did later. So on April, this is April 10th or April 9th, I published this article again at Nature, because this is after Trump launched this reciprocal tariff. The whole world was shocked, right? I also, and China, stood up to the Trump's tariff. I published this article. I explained why China responded tit for tat to Trump's tariff. The editor told me the number of reads was very high. Okay, now let me explain first why unilateral concession failed to end the trade war. Actually, the China-US trade war did not start from this year. It started in 2018 when Trump became president. In 2016, then he started a trade war against China because he always complained so-called unfair trade practice, the theft of intellectual property, and the forced technology transfer. But at that time, Chinese government was not so stubborn. And the Chinese government considered all the complaint of the US government seriously. Then the Chinese government cut tariff 4 times. So which lower the China's average tariff from 12% to 7.5%. In addition, China unilaterally lowered the tariff on automobile from 25% to 15%. And the Chinese government even revised the foreign investment law, which allowed 100% of foreign-owned automobile company in China. Before that was not possible. Elon Musk, the largest donor of President Trump, actually is the first beneficiary of foreigner. That's how Tesla Shanghai, started. So after the law was revised, Tesla invested in Shanghai and built its mega factory there. So you see, Trump's buddy benefit from China's concession. And China actually did even more. Okay. And in January 2020, US-China signed this so-called phase 1 trade agreement. So in this agreement, I don't know how many of you, read this one. If you did not, read this one, please read, because if you look at the text, the text is full of China should this, China should that, China swallow. There is no, this is an agreement between two countries. China is a sovereign country. So in this agreement, you should like China should this, China should that. But this agreement is full of China should this, should that. But China swallow all those kind of requests. Then what China promised to do, increase import from US by $200 billion. And China promised to strengthen the protection for IP, intellectual property, to prohibit forced technology transfer. And China actually promised, and actually China did, unilaterally accept the healthy and safety standard of US FDA on dairy products, beef, pork, poultry, and processed meat. This is a big concession. Why? Usually, now this so-called health and safety standard are this non-tariff barrier. Because today, the most important trade barriers are non-tariff barrier. Basically, it's health and safety standard. But China said, okay, as long as US FDA said your beef, pork, whatever those kind of meat, products are safe, we will accept. So even now, about 500 American factory, they got a license under this agreement. And China also agreed to allow 100% foreign-owned insurance company, mutual fund, security firms. But the trade war continues. And the Bush, this Biden administration, not even 1% tariff on Chinese goods was reduced. In addition, more and more Chinese companies have been included in the so-called entity list. That means more and more Chinese companies, they will not be able to import American technology. So that basically means continue to make more concession will not end the trade war. So the only way for China to end the trade war is basically respond firmly and push firmly to Trump's tariff. Well, in terms of economic evaluation about whether China's strategy will be correct or not, I think economically it is optimal to respond firmly. President Trump always talk about so-called reciprocity or reciprocal tariff. I'm not native speaker, I'm Chinese, but I understand the meaning of reciprocity, I think, much better than President Trump. Yes, let me tell you this. Reciprocity is one of the fundamental principles of the WTO. So that basically means if Japan impose zero tariff on automobile imports from the United States, US should also impose zero tariff rather than 15%. That's called reciprocity. So if China opens its market to American goods, the US should open its market to Chinese goods. This is called reciprocity. So according to the estimation of the Peterson Institute of International Economics, this is American think tank, before February 10th, 2025, the average US tariff on Chinese goods was about 19%. And the average Chinese tariff on American goods was about 21%. Basically, in terms of a tariff, reciprocity was achieved between the two countries. So given this kind of reciprocity situation, if China did not retaliate after US imposed additional tariff, China would suffer welfare loss. So that's why I disagree with the former governor of People's Bank of China, Dr. Yuqing. I said he's wrong because he specializes in monetary policy. I specialize in international economics. So that's why I know better than him. Well, so that's why economically it is optimal. Now let's look at a so-called reciprocal tariff. The President Trump, imposed on all the trading partners. So after he launched, announced this tariff, many people ask him, what is the merit? How you got this, tariff level for all the trading partners? The White House showed this formula, right? This formula sounds scientific because it includes Greek letter, the phi, epsilon, something like that. But let me explain about this formula. The epsilon means import elasticity. That basically means if the import goods price increase, 1%, what is the percentage of decrease of import? That means import elasticity. 5 means the rate of tariff passed through. That means basically means US impose 15% tariff on Japanese imports. What is the percentage tariff would be passed to the consumer? So if you understand those two parameters, you know this is very complicated absolute effect because China exports, mobile phone, electronic. Japan exports, oil. Automobile to United States. Saudi Arabia export oil. So different country, different products will have different absolute effect. It will be a daunting task to estimate absolute effect. Well, the Trump's team came out with the idea that epsilon is equal to 5 equal to 1. Then divided the result by 2. Then they calculate this is reciprocal tariff. Now, what does that mean? That basically means any country which has trade surplus with United States, US will use this reciprocal tariff to collect half of the trade surplus from that country. This is fair, this is not fair. This is reciprocal, this is nonsense. So the first two reasons basically shows why China should fight back, why China should stand up to Trump's tariff. But the first two reasons do not guarantee China could win the trade war. Now I'm going to explain the 4 more reasons. Those 2 reasons shows why China could win this trade war. So most of Chinese exports to the US are manufactured along global value chain. I think this is very important point. I think President Trump and his team have zero understanding about the nature of China's export to the US. They still think China's trade to the US, export to the US today, similar to this trade study by a British economist, David Ricardo, studied 200 years ago. Yes, that's completely wrong. China's export to the United States is not Toyota's export to the US. Most Chinese exports are manufactured along global value chains where American multinationals specializing on research, product design, marketing, and retailing, while Chinese firms in manufacturing or assembling. Basically, the export to China to the US are the result of the close cooperation between American company and the Chinese company. Most Chinese exporters are contract manufacturers of American multinationals. They don't randomly produce products. Then they knock the doors of American households and try to sell them like the poor Willy Loman of the deaths of American salesmen. That's completely wrong. The products assembled and manufactured in China are indispensable for the operation of American company. So if you want to know more how the global value chain play the critical role in the success of China's export, you can read my book, Decoding China's Export Miracle. Yes, you can read my book. I can tell you, many people, when they talk about Chinese goods and why Chinese goods are so competitive and so successful in the global market, because they're cheap. Do you think iPhone is cheap? Do you think Nike Michael Jordan shoe is cheap? Do you think Sony PS5 is cheap? Do you think Nintendo is cheap? They're all assembled in China. Actually, it is a foreign brand, foreign technology, and a foreign marketing distribution network, which make assembled and made in China so competitive in the global market. So that's the point Trump and his team don't understand. So because of a global value chain strategy, then what happened? American multinational, they can earn a lot of money, but in the short term, they have no flexibility when they encounter the tariff imposed by their president. So here, there is I quote, this is what's said by Stephen Milan, chairman of Council for Economic Advisor. He got a PhD from Harvard University, okay? On April 7th, he went to Hudson Institute to defend President Trump's global reciprocal tariff. Countries that run large trade surplus are pretty inflexible. By contrast, American company have plenty substitution option. We can make stuff at home. We can buy from other country. I don't know what he's talking about. Apple has no flexibility to import Samsung phone made in Korea. You know what I mean? Because Trump imposed 100% tariff, then Apple could, according to this Stephen Milan, or then Apple said, okay, I start to sell Samsung phone. Is that a joke? Nike has no flexibility to sell Essex shoe made in Japan. Essex shoe is a Japanese brand, right? Because of high tariff, the Nike start to sell, Essex shoe in Japan because American has flexibility. This is complete nonsense. So Walmart has no flexibility to import 68 billion of goods from other country. Why? This is because of scale and size. Of course, all the goods sold in, like a Walmart, there's no brand, no technology, Indian, Vietnamese workers, they can do. But India, Vietnam, or any other developing country together, they are not able to supply 68 billion US goods in a few months, even in a few years. Well, basically means American import are not flexible. Because they are not flexible, then what do they have to do? They have to pay the tariff. Trump always said, oh, foreigners should pay tariff. We don't pay. That may be correct for Toyota. So Toyota is different. Toyota car belongs to Toyota. Many, Chinese exporter, they have no ownership of the product they export to the United States. The ownership determines who pays the tariff. So Chinese contract manufacturer of Nike, iPhone, Dell computer, Hewlett Packard computer, they have no ownership. Think about this. If Chinese Foxconn or Luxshare owns iPhone, why do they sell to the United States? They can sell to any place they like, right? They can make more money. They have no ownership. The ownership decides how American companies, they control the products manufactured, assembled by Chinese firms. And also because that, Chinese firms have no obligation to pay. It's your product, it's not my product. In addition to that, Chinese, contract manufacturer have no financial resource to pay the tariff. Why? Or you pay me only $4.5 per phone, then now you want me to pay $1 tariff. Is that crazy? So who pays? So that's why Toyota, of course, Toyota is humble and Toyota has no choice to pay like 1.45 trillion Japanese yen tariff. But have you heard Foxconn or Chinese Luxshare, the two largest, Apple product assemblers, our tariff cost would be more than 1 billion? No. Why? They only made an announcement to this kind of worried investors that we have no obligation, we don't pay. Actually, I knew that. So last November, I published an article. I said Apple would be hit hardest, not Chinese firm. Therefore, American importer, they are the victim first of the Trump's tariff. So if Chinese government retaliate, American exporter would suffer too. So that's why I call the trade war is a double whammy for the US economy. So this is one of the reasons why Chinese government has been cool and just pushed back so firmly, because China will win. Okay. The last reason is China has more cards than implied by the trade balancing goods. So whenever, American politician or policy maker who support this kind of trade war, they were very confident why US, would win. Why? Because they look at this data, the deficit in goods, right? This is all the number that they quoted. Or, China is not open, Chinese government engage a lot of unfair practice, so that's why we cannot sell our products, right? Yes, look at this trade statistic in goods. in 2024, US ran close to 300 billion trade deficit, right? Therefore, the conventional wisdom just use this data as oh, China depends on American market much more than vice versa. And China has much less bargaining power than the US in the trade war. It's completely wrong. Why? Because today, more and more American companies, they have adopted this so-called global value chain strategy. They turn to we call factory-less manufacture. Traditionally, we think about export is like this. Home country made stuff at home, then export to foreign countries, right? That's so-called export. Now, American company, more and more American companies, they don't make stuff in the United States. They have their products made in China, made in India, made in Japan, made in Taiwan. Then they export their product to the global market. They only focus on what? Branding, technology innovation, and the product design. They outsource all the production tasks to other countries. Therefore, if you look at trade statistics, you don't see Apple export even $1 to any country. Check trade statistics. All the Apple's products made in China, now some made in India and Vietnam. So what is the contribution of Apple to the United States export? Zero. And Apple only contributed what? Deficit, because when iPhone shipped from China to United States, that's deficit. NVIDIA, all the chip made in Taiwan, then export back to the United States, they turn to deficit. Do you believe this trade statistic? NVIDIA market value is bigger than Japan. NVIDIA contribute only trade deficit to the United States. So the whole global trading system is unfair to the United States. It's weird. So look at this. Here I listed 5 American factory-less manufacturers: Apple, Qualcomm, NVIDIA, Nike, AMD. Because I don't read the number individually. The 5 American factory-less manufacturers made 106.6 billion sales in China in 2024, which is equivalent to 74% of US export to China. That is showed by trade statistics. So this is a card China can use. There's American company made huge sales in China. So in case the trade war getting even more, wars, then China can use them as cards. But of course, because they already actively lobby President Trump and his team. Now look at the Tesla. The Tesla actually, sold 657,000 EVs in China, which equivalent to 21 billion. All the Tesla car made in China and sold in China. I always said, in the worst case, remove Tesla car out of China's green car list. If Chinese government did that, Tesla's sale would fall to the floor. So those are the cars China can use. American multinational, they enjoy the large market of China, but their sales, not even $1, has been recorded in the trade statistic. So that's why America always complained that is Chinese market is not open. Even they made tons of money there. Then let's, I show you this kind of fact to prove my argument. Here, what I showed you is official trade statistic in comparison with Apple's sales in China, official trade statistic in apparel and food, and footwear compared with Nike sale. Just look at the last row in 2018. According to official trade statistic, China imported 4 million laptop and mobile phone from United States, but Apple sold 50 2 billion. So Apple sold 52 billion in phone and iMac and other laptop. But why statistics shows China only imported 4 million? Because all the Apple's sales in China are not counted as US export to China. So similarly, look at the Nike. This is the number one I quote from Apple's financial report. The other is from the UN country statistic. That is the statistic provided by all UN member country. That is official. And look at China's import in apparel and footwear in 2018. China imported 209 million US dollar in apparel and footwear, but Nike sold 5 billion. That's a lot, right? So the same thing, all the Nike products made in China, sold in China, are not considered as US export to China. Those basically is the activity of American factoryless manufacturer. So today's trade is completely different with the trade David Ricardo study 200 years ago, but we still use out-of-date trade statistic to evaluate so-called bilateral trade balance. Then we start to trade what we fight. Okay?
Just one question.
Please.
So in the previous slide, you said Nike's sales in China was 7.5 billion.
Yes.
On this,
This is 2018. So this is old data.
Okay.
Okay. Let me see, because I'm in Japan. Same thing for Japan. In 2024, Nike made 25 billion sales in Japan. Okay, Japan's trade surplus in goods with the United States is 70 billion. So 25 billion is more than 1/3. Is that right? So if you use 70 minus 25 billion, Japan's trade surplus with US will decrease. Then you minus further this digital deficit with the United States, close to zero. So next time,
You should have told the
no,
Japanese.
that's what I said. Japanese government official, if any of you will listen next time when Trump complain about, there are too many cars on American streets, you said, there are too many Apple products in Japan. We don't like that. You look at trade statistics, all the Apple products Japan, used, shipped from China is China's export to Japan, not from the United States. But Apple captured the larger chunk of the retail value. This is the value added. Apple's, profit margin for iPhone, 60%. The average profit margin for all products is about 37%. So in the future, Japanese government can argue with President Trump, too many Apple products, Nike products we use. So that's also a problem. We should think about to use more Sony phone. We should think about to wear more Access shoes, okay? This is another thing, rares with AI chips. I think total US import of rares from China, less than 1 billion. That's small, right? But rares are critical for today. It is a choke point of many supply chains. So that's why I say if you look at the trade balance in goods, that make many American politicians, policymakers very confident. We win because China depend on us more. Yes, rares, very small. But of course, the United States has monopoly power over many advanced technology, in particular AI chips. I always say, AI chips are about the future. Even today, US did not sell any AI chip to China. Chinese economy will continue. Chinese people's life, will be same as before. Nothing will change. But once China stopped exporting rares, what happened to American industry? President Trump, actually, I think I like his statement. This is after Kuala Lumpur meeting. Trump knows this rares, and he think nobody knows. Okay, yeah, this is an interview by Laura Ingraham of Fox Anchor on November 10th. Nobody knows what magnets are. If you don't have magnets, you cannot make car, you don't make computer, you don't make television, and you don't, and all other things. You don't make anything. It is a 30 years effort to monopolize the very important thing. So China control a choke point, which is so important for today. Therefore, if China exercises power, definitely China can win. Well, I talk about this importance of global value chain in China-US trade war. Then some of you may think, well, like a supply chain can move out of China. Yes, I agree with you 100%. I would like to tell you that now the new trend of a global supply chain is to diversify them away from China. So it is possible to diversify supply chain away from China, but it takes time. It took 2 decades to build the China-centered global manufacturing, supply chain. It will take at least 1 decade, 10 years to change the China-centered global manufacturing supply chain. So here I show you the data. I always use a fact to back my argument. In 2021, US imported 138 million laptop computers. 93 of them came from China, 93. 100 laptops, 93 from China. 2024, China's share decreased, right? Still 73. So 3 years, China's share decreased 20%, right? So you need another 3 years, another 3 years. So if you want to make less than 50, right, you need another 3 years. You want to make it less than 25 years. So that's why I said it takes at least 10 years for the US to reduce its dependence on China. One of the reasons that President Trump imposed this so-called reciprocal tariff is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. That's always a claim. So after I listened what he said, and also his Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick said, I feel so ridiculous. Look at this is the message. The army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make an iPhone. That kind of thing is going to come to America. I don't know whether America really like to use a little screw to screw iPhone. I don't think so, right? So I don't know. They understand the hardship of screwing little screw to make iPhone. I don't know. They understand how low the salary of a Chinese worker working in Foxconn or Luxshare factory. So this is kind of illusion. So that's why I'm puzzled. I'm an American trained economist. I think there are a lot of smart people in the United States, right? But I don't know why this is the Secretary of Commerce. Okay, then you have the President Trump's message. Oh, he said, okay, all the iPhone jobs should be back. Otherwise, you're faced with 25% tariff. Yes, Apple will invest money to build a data center, but Apple will never, build, iPhone or iMac assembler in the United States. So whenever I, read those kind of message, or whenever I, hear those kind of talk, I always feel like so ridiculous. I couldn't help laugh. Why? Because 15 years ago, my research, so that's why I want to tell you, research is very valuable, useful, but it's good research. 15 years ago, that's in 2010, okay? I published articles, how the iPhone widens the United trade deficit with China. It was 15 years ago. So that's why I think maybe President Trump and his team, suddenly they read my paper, they copy my idea. Now look at, this is what I wrote in the paper. I said, an interesting hypothetical scenario is a one where Apple had all iPhone assembled in the US. Yes, I already considered scenario. And I impose the condition is, if that happened, then Apple should pay American worker 10 times the salary paid to the Chinese worker. So why this important? If Apple could have all the iPhone, iMac, make airport assembled in the United States. This would create jobs for low-educated Americans. This will increase US export and reduce trade deficit, as I told you. Apple is one of the major reasons that cause US trade deficit. NVIDIA is another reason which causes American trade deficit. So if you let American, make NVIDIA chips, if you let American assemble iPhone, then all the Apple products would be exported from the United States to the world, right? All the NVIDIA chip will be exported from the United States to the whole world. Then you have trade balance. And I also said, it is a better way for Apple to practice CSR, corporate social responsibility, and share its success with ordinary American. Because Apple is a very successful company, right? The largest IT and electronic maker in the world. So the capitalization of Apple is more than 4 trillion, NVIDIA more than 5 trillion. Then if you pay more to American worker, let them assemble iPhones, then that's the way you share with the American community, rather than just always say, we practice corporate social responsibility by donating some, a small amount of money. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much.
Right. Right, that was fascinating. So we have 10 plus minutes for Q&A. And so if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand, identify yourself, and speak up. Let's take questions or comments from the floor first. And the viewers online, if you have any questions or comments, please press the raise hand button and wait, or you can write down your name and the question in the Q&A box. So open the floor. And yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Calvin Cole. I'm visiting scholar from Indonesia. So I'm from Southeast Asia. And back home in Southeast Asia, US, China, becoming a very good topic to discuss, particularly talking about diversification. I see Vietnam on your screen. And my question to you is very simple. I'm not an economist, but my question is how Southeast Asia can place themselves between the US and China, and how Southeast Asia can be benefited and also benefiting China and US in such landscape. Thank you.
Okay, as I mentioned about supply chain diversification, but one thing I'd like to emphasize that the supply chain diversification does not mean like India, Vietnam, or Indonesia, you have develop the local supply chain. It's basically the supply chain in China move to Indonesia, to Vietnam, to India. Therefore, I think one way to benefit this is to welcome investment from China. So now if you look at the trade statistic recently from January 1st to November, China recorded more than $1 trillion trade surplus. Why? Because China, export to US decreased in final products, but intermediate export to Vietnam, India increased significantly because many exports to the United States still depend on intermediate products from China. Now I think many multinational companies, they try to avoid this geopolitical risk. So they ask Chinese supplier to invest outside of China. So if India and other South Asian country welcome the investment from China, I think your country will definitely benefit from the rivalry of China and the United States.
It's interesting. All right, anything else? There.
Hello, I'm Katarina. I'm a PhD student and I'm originally from Germany. And I was wondering, I think tit for tat is a very kind of popular strategy in game theory. Like in general, you should live your life as much as possible tit for tat. I think there are some studies who argue that. And I was wondering, if Europe did a mistake by being too soft on Trump, by not reciprocate as well, and maybe walk away with a worse deal than they could have done if they would have reciprocated. But I'm wondering, Europe and China are very different, so maybe it was the right strategy. So I wanted to know, what is your take on that, whether Europe did a mistake in their strategy or not? Because in Germany, actually, I think we were van der Leyen was criticized for being too soft. So I'm not sure if that the popular opinion was correct or not there.
Actually, I agree with you 100%. And the EU has been too soft because EU has a 18 trillion economy as a whole. I think China has 20 trillion economy. So roughly EU size is the same as China. So I was surprised why, EU did not push back Trump's tariff firmly. I think if EU, respond tit for tat, and EU's today's situation would be different. Yeah. Because you should think like Trump always said, okay, because the United States had to be ripped off by the whole system, blah, blah, like this. On the other hand, Trump always said, don't impose tariff or tax on digital services of American company. Is that right? So, American company like Google, Amazon, they enjoy a huge amount of profit from the global market. So they actually have a monopolistic power in the digital economy. I think other countries like Japan, you have right to tax them. So if you are just always afraid of President Trump, then you just take a 15% tariff and then thank him for his kindness.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Yes, please. Oh, but there was. Okay, you go first.
Yes, I'm Tuấn from the AIP program, and I want to ask about this action from China. That is standing for a turning point from China foreign policy toward the US, or is have any mark any turning point in foreign policy or not?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, let me clarify my question. So, in your paper, you said in 2022, China is still using a very soft approach to the U.S. trade war, like the phase one for the trade agreement. But in 2025, this year,
Yeah.
China acts very firmly
Yes.
to the trade war. So does it mean that China, this is a turning point from China to continue to react firmer to other U.S. action in the future?
Oh, yes, for sure, 100%. Actually, I wrote an article, also published at Nikkei Asia. The title is China won the first round of Sino-US trade war. At the end, I said, now the two countries has a temporary truce. I don't know when this trade war will be escalated again, but one thing for sure, that is China will respond firmly to any challenge of the United States. Yes, I'm 100% sure.
Related question. So why didn't China push back more firmly back in,
I explained to you in 2018, actually, it is also fact China, emerged as second largest economy. China benefited so much from the globalization. But because China was a developing country, therefore China was entitled to impose a high tariff. For example, automobile tariff was 25%, right? When China entered WTO, China's tariff on automobile was 80%. Then China got a good deal that, okay, China could lower this to 25%, and China also imposed various restriction on and like a financial industry. But I think Chinese government realized, China is one of the largest beneficiary of globalization. Therefore, it's not good if China continue to use those policy to share, to share its own industry. So that's why, China, cut the tariff, revise the foreign investment law, and also even agree with the United States through this, phase one trade agreement. Yeah, but as I mentioned, because all the concession, failed to stop the trade war, and also why? Because China responded firmly, so China actually won the trade war. So why not continue? You have to be chicken or not, right? So to be chicken didn't bring anything. Now to be brave, then you won the trade war. So you continue. That's the right strategy in the game. Is that right?
Okay, thank you.
Professor
Satsuji.
My name is Takagi, and I'm a professor at GRIPS. And thank you very much for stimulating and interesting talks. And so I want to have some hear some comment from science and technology development strategy of China. It's a kind of, in United States these days, after this neoliberalism storm, a kind of, everything is done by rich people, something, and manage everything. And so, but in China, I guess that how this kind of thing, is organized and kind of supported.
Yeah, actually, this is a very good question. Think about what happened to Huawei, the #1 high-tech company in China. Before 2018, Huawei did not develop its own operating system. Huawei did not develop its own chips. Now Huawei rolled out its own, operating system. Huawei, developed its own CPU. So thanks to Americans, high-tech, export control, thanks to the trade war. Yes, because now, this is, as I said, I'm an economist. Actually, I think global value chain, this is an excellent idea. This is a new division of labor that improve the efficiency up to the extreme. But now, just because, the US start the trade war, on China, and also US impose various, sanction on Chinese high-tech company, you can see the list very long. Then China realized, okay, so we have to be on our own. We could no longer get those kind of high-tech American company have. Then we have to develop our own to avoid the future disruption. To avoid US use this kind of choking point, okay, to disrupt the Chinese, economic development. So Chinese government also doubled down to encourage, homegrown high-tech company to develop, advanced technology and to strengthen import substitution, in particular in the high-tech area.
Okay, we are running out of time, but we have the one last question, which is from the online viewer, who said, do you think tariffs will become a permanent feature of US-China economic relations, or is a return to trade liberalization still possible?
Well, I think that's also a very good question. Personally, I think US-China phase one trade agreement is a very good deal for the two countries to come back. But I think it's almost impossible. The reason is very simple. US already imposed 15% tariff on Japan and the EU. Japan and the EU are American ally, right? Mm-hmm. China is the rivalry. So if US finally said, okay, zero tariff, reciprocal tariff turn to zero, I think Japan EU will be upset, right? So I think 15% tariff will be a flaw. Mm-hmm. Unless President Trump changes his mind to lower Japan and EU's tariff. Otherwise, I think even eventually China-US will have another agreement. 50% will be the floor. So it's impossible to move back to the old day. I think one of the major reasons is that there are many American politicians, they want to decouple with China. So that's, they think tariff actually are very effective way. Yes, as I said, in next 10 years, we'll see that US dependence on China will become less and less. That's for sure.
All right. Thank you, Yuqing, for the excellent talk and very insightful answers to our questions. So everyone, please join me in thanking Yuqing. Okay, so the date for the next GRIPS lunchtime seminar has not been determined. So we will let you know when we know it. If you have not signed up for a GRIPS newsletters, please do so at this point by using the link in the chat box. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next GRIPS lunchtime seminar. Thank you very much.